Hello brothers, my name is Baruti KMT-Sisouvong. I have been receiving a lot of positive reviews regarding my having delivered passages with Baruti. And so the idea came to me would be to share passages with you, but not just passages in this case. I'm going to be reading an entire book. The first book that's up for consideration is Freemasonry, Its Hidden Meaning by George H. Steinmetz. And so what I will do is I will read a chapter and I will share with you. So we're going to begin with the preface and the foreword, and then we will do chapter 1. The preface is as follows. The archetypal image of the wise man, the savior or redeemer, lies buried and dormant in man's unconscious since the dawn of culture. It is awakened whenever the times are out of joint and a human society is committed to serious error. In the present era, when indeed the times are of joint, Freemasonry should eagerly embrace the sacred opportunity of awakening the torpid consciousness of the leaders of the masses to the real truth of Masonic wisdom. This is my prayer and hope, and this desire has inspired me to present in this treatise the elucidation of those Masonic truths as I have been given the light to see them. The foreword reads, "A younger brother shall be instructed in working to prevent spoiling the materials for want of judgment and for encasing and continuing of brotherly love. A good man and true makes known to a friend his desire to become a Mason. He is given a petition for the degrees of Masonry, which he fills out and presents to the lodge. It is received, a committee of investigation is appointed and functions efficiently or otherwise, and if elected, the degrees are conferred in due course. The newly made Master Mason sits among the brethren, is present at the conferring of a few degrees, becomes wearied of the same routine repeated over and over and over again, and soon fails to attend lodge, except perhaps on some special occasion such as a past master's night, a banquet, or possibly not at all. Over 25 years of experience in Masonry has forced the conclusion that this lack of interest of Masons in Masonry is largely due to failure on the part of the lodge to teach the science and philosophy of Masonry, especially to younger members. At the time when their curiosity is aroused and their interest is flaming, Masonry has been defined as a system of morals, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. The ritual nowhere adequately explains these symbols and allegories, and not only conceals the true explanations, but often also actually misleads. To transform rough ashlars into perfect ashlars, reading, studying, and instruction are required. It should not be forgotten that only stones capable of being fashioned should be admitted into our venerable institution, and that the internal qualifications should be carefully scrutinized. Masters of lodges, officers, and coaches are continually being asked questions by those of inquiring minds which they are all too often unable to answer. The necessary information can be obtained only from the continual and persistent study of the writings of those Masonic students who have placed their thoughts and researches upon the written page, thus conforming to the admonition to the well-informed brethren to impart knowledge to the lesser informed. In this book, Brother Steinmetz has created an elementary textbook and guide for the study and understanding of the esoteric meanings of Masonry. He is eminently well qualified to undertake this task, being well versed in the mysteries, a student of Hebrew, a clear, logical thinker, realizing the necessity of continued Masonic education. Since it is intended for the use of the beginner rather than the advanced Masonic scholar, there are many quotations from the monitorial work to facilitate its use. Some students of Masonry may not agree entirely with the interpretations herein set forth. Even these, however, will benefit as they will need arrive logically at a better explanation, and in so doing, advance themselves. A careful study of this book will implement the student with proper and plausible explanations of many of the symbols and allegories contained in the 3 degrees. And it will stimulate him further to pursue the study of the deeper esoteric meanings of our exceedingly rich ritual. It must not be forgotten that although the Grand Lodge system dates to the year 1717, Masonry, or the thing called Masonry, has existed from the beginning of man. This instructive, thought-provoking book should be in the hands of every English-speaking Mason. The study and possession of the knowledge contained herein will bring about greater understanding, fellowship, and brotherhood among those who are privileged to be members of this honorable institution. These words were penned by Brother Herbert H. Schultz, MD, past master, 32nd degree Mason. Chapter 1, by way of introduction. Myself, when young, did eagerly frequent Doctor and Saint, and heard great argument about it and about, but evermore came out by the same door wherein I went. This quotation from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam is veiled in allegory, as is Freemasonry, and is an excellent description of my mental state when I first started meditating upon the deeper aspects of life. The quotation appealed for me, for as the poet, I too had eagerly frequented both Doctor and Saint. Doctor, learned in things material; Saint, supposedly learned in things spiritual. Like Khayyam, I came out by the same door wherein I went, not satisfied nor enlightened by the answers given me. It is inherent in man to seek a religious belief to which he can subscribe with wholehearted faith. I was seeking such faith and was sincere in my desire to begin a religious belief. But intellect demanded it be consistent with such knowledge as I possessed of natural history and material science. In this search, I studied every religion with which I came in contact. As a singer in various churches, I was afforded opportunities to hear the creeds of the principal faiths expounded. I did not exclude Roman Catholicism or Buddhism. Both contain much to commend, particularly the latter in its esoteric form. The study was far from time wasted. None of these creeds provided a satisfying meaning of life, the answer to why am I here, which at some time every individual asks from the depth of his being. The answer to my entire satisfaction finally came with a fuller understanding of Freemasonry. Most of the truly great Masonic writers have deplored the lack of esoteric Masonic knowledge among the craft in general. Mackey speaks of the parrot Mason, describing him as one who commits to memory questions and answers of the cathetical lectures and the formulas of the ritual, but pays no attention to the history and philosophy of the institution itself. Called a parrot Mason because he repeats what he has learned without any conception of its true meaning. He also ironically describes as bright Masons those who are letter perfect in the ritual, and continues, but the progress of Masonry as a science now requires something more than a mere knowledge of the lectures to constitute a Masonic scholar. Long ago, J.D. Buck stated, in its ritualism and monitorial lessons, Masonry teaches nothing in morals and science, in religion, or in any other department of human knowledge or human interest, not taught elsewhere in current forms of thought or by the sages of the past. In these directions, it has no secrets of any kind. It is in the ancient symbols of Freemasonry that its real secrets lie concealed. And these are densely veiled to the Mason as to any other, unless he has studied the science and symbolism in general, and Masonic symbols in particular. The most profound aspects or secrets of Masonry are not revealed in the lodge at all. They belong only to the few. Buck also made the statement that it was true today as it was when he first uttered it years ago. There was never a greater need than at the present time. Never so great an opportunity as now for Masonry to assume its true place among the institutions of man and force recognition by the simple power of brotherly love, relief, and truth based upon philosophy and nowhere exists outside of its ancient symbols. If the majority of Masons do not realize the true significance and value of their possessions, there is all the more need for those who do to speak out in the face of discouragement and detraction and do their utmost to demonstrate the truth. Albert Pike writes in Morals and Dogma, a few rudimentary lessons in architecture, a few universally admitted maxims of morality, a few unimportant traditions whose real meaning is unknown or misunderstood will no longer satisfy the earnest inquirer after Masonic truth. In Pike's Legenda, 4th degree to 14th degree Scottish Rite, he states, in the United States, the blue degrees teach morality only, refuse to intermeddle with questions political or religious, and require only a belief in God, and faintly in the immortality of the soul, except so far as they declare the Holy Bible to be the rule and guide of a man's conduct, and the inspired Word of God, which, if it were not evaded and practiced by the admission of Hebrews, would make the Masonry of the United States a strictly Christian association. In the early part of the 18th century, Freemasonry was, for many of its initiates, the teaching of the Hermetic philosophy. In one of his most vehement bursts of sarcasm, of which Pike was a master when he deemed the occasion demanded, he refers to the Blue Lodge lectures in these words: "It has been objected to us that in our lectures we undervalue that which is absurdly called symbolic masonry. It is as if any masonry could not be symbolic. It is quite true that we should not value it if we saw nothing in the symbols of the Blue Lodge beyond the imbecile pretenses of interpretation of them contained in the ordinary sterile instruction which we owe to Webb and his predecessors. There is truth in all these charges. The average Mason is lamentably ignorant of the real meaning of Masonic symbology and knows little of its esoteric teaching. On the other hand, one must admit the existence of mitigating circumstances. This is a busy world, and few are blessed with the time, even though they have the inclination to acquire such knowledge. There is no one source where the general knowledge may be acquired, as most writers deal with specific phases of Masonry. Frankly speaking, Pike, Mackey, and even Waite are too recondite for the average Mason to gain much enlightenment from their writing, unless he approaches their work with a considerable background of metaphysical and philosophical knowledge. They will profit him little. It is to place as much of this teaching as is seemingly advisable in a more accessible form that this book has been undertaken. The writer has earnestly endeavored to write as simply as the profundity of the subject itself permits. The reader is asked to be mindful of the fact that in a work of this nature, there is included no small handicap of being forced to allude, but vaguely at times, to those things which could not be committed to writing. I have taken the various printed manuals as my precedent, assuming no objection can be offered for printing herein such ritual as the Grand Lodges have authorized to be printed in these manuals. Where it seems advantageous, I have therefore taken the liberty of quoting freely therefrom. The only motive for this book is the fulfillment of the writer's obligations, both moral and Masonic, to assist others to such light as has been so generously allowed to obtain. The reader is asked to approach the subject matter with the words of Herbert Spencer as his guide. There is a principle which is a bar against all information and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is condemnation before investigation. When I petitioned a Masonic order, I believed in a supreme being. Therefore, my application was not a misrepresentation insofar as claiming a belief in a one living and true God. My principal reason for seeking admission was that many of my associates were members of the order. Observation satisfied me that most of the better classes of businessmen I contacted were Masons, and my superior in the organization with which I was connected and whom I greatly admired was high in the order. These, I confess, are not the most worthy of motives, but are probably on a level with those of most persons seeking membership in the Masonic Lodge. In retrospection, I realized that at first I obtained very little benefit from Freemasonry, nor does one become a swimmer after the first few times in the water. Later, I was requested to organize a lodge quartet, and as a member thereof, I was called upon to attend and assist in initiations. Hearing the degrees repeatedly conferred, many of the beautiful phrases of the ritual impressed themselves on my mind. It was but natural that I should ponder over their meaning. Because of an inquisitive disposition, I attained whatever progress I have made in Masonry. The first serious thinking I recall devoting to Masonry was stimulated by the instructions to the candidate at a certain time to pray for himself, coupled with a reminder that previously the lodge had prayed for him. This appeared to be significant as it was the first time the candidate was not prompted to give a specific reply or told precisely what to do. The obvious answer occurring to one is that if prayer is to be the most effective, one should pray for oneself. But that seemed too apparent and not entirely satisfying. The answer to this question is the raison d'etre of Masonry. However, like all of Masonry's secret lesson, the reason is so concealed that only he who sincerely seeks it will, in fact, ever discover it. When the truth of this lesson has been realized, one discovers the most important facts of existence itself. Then, too, he learns that Masonry is religion as well. Brethren, this has been the first chapter of George H. Steinmetz's work, Freemasonry, Its Hidden Meaning. I will again read a chapter, and I will then post and share those with you. Should you have questions or comments, don't hesitate to post them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. This is an opportunity to provide brethren with access to a work they may have heard of, but yet have, for whatever reason, not had the opportunity to read. It is my honor to spend this time with you reading this book. It is my privilege to be in a position to do so. So I thank you for your time and your attention. I'll see you next time.